Hello, you are watching the Europe Report on France 24. I'm Catherine Nicholson with you on what is the first day of voting in this year's European election. Well, there are two countries voting today, the Netherlands and the UK. Let's start with the larger of them. Britain's 73 members of the European Parliament might never even take their seats if the UK quits the EU, as is still currently the plan. Brexit is very much dominating the campaign. Longtime anti-EU campaigner and current MEP Nigel Farage has been leading in the polls with his newly launched Brexit party. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Theresa May is under pressure to resign over her handling of the exit negotiations, and her Conservative Party is expected to poll in fifth place. Well, the results won't be announced until Sunday after all EU states have voted. Our reporter Clovis Casali has been over to the UK to take a listen to some voters there on both sides of the Brexit argument.
Brexit is a divisive issue in Westminster and outside, with police often having to intervene.
We always talk to each other. We may not agree with each other.
Do you want him around you, yes or no?
No.
Right,
no.
Can you just go there? That's all we're asking. Simple.
Nearly 60% of Londoners voted to remain in the European Union. The city and its bankers aren't the only ones worried by the implications of Brexit. Arup Roy is a musician and DJ. His independent label sells records across the world, with 70% heading to Europe.
Currently, it's very straightforward. You don't have to fill out any customs forms. And the cost of postage is relatively low compared to other countries. Same for traveling and DJing. At the moment, we don't have to worry about visas or work permits, and it's very straightforward flying in and out of the EU.
Years ago, Arup lived in student halls with Ben, a Conservative who campaigned for Brexit. Nowadays, when they meet up, it's hard not to talk about politics.
A lot of people voted leave because they were fed up with British politics and they felt unrepresented by our system. It seems to contradict the idea of take back control. You know, you're giving control back to the same politicians that you feel are not representing you.
Both often witness Brexit debates getting out of hand.
People have been forced into separate camps, and that has extended to families, business relationships, and all sorts of things.
The country and the Conservative Party are torn over Brexit. Ben blames Prime Minister Theresa May for her handling of the negotiations with Brussels over the withdrawal agreement. She's not quite the leader he hoped for.
There can be an element, if treated correctly, of Britain going out into the world as sort of the merchant adventurers that we did, dating back to the medieval period.
Member of a Conservative think tank, Ben is invited to a conference on the virtues of nationalism. All here are Brexiteers, with some even standing in the European elections.
This is the last thing I wanted to be doing. It's absurd to be fighting another European election 3 years after we voted leave. But in the end, the issue is unresolved, and not fighting them is a kind of desertion in battle.
Divisions run deep, but the British seem to share one desire: for uncertainty to end quickly. A recent poll showed that 83% of people are sick of hearing about Brexit.
Well, this side of the English Channel, close to 13 million Dutch citizens also eligible to vote today to elect 26 members of the European Parliament. On Wednesday night, the Prime Minister Mark Rutte took on a major rival, the far-right Thierry Baudet, in a televised debate. Commentators seem to think that neither came out a clear winner, despite both landing some punches. Their parties are expected to win round about the same number of seats in the EU Parliament. Well, our reporting team just stopped off in the Netherlands as part of the France 24 Europe tour. There, they met some of the people who are living on top of Europe's biggest natural gas field, some of whom have lost their homes amid earthquakes caused by gas extraction. This and concerns over climate change are making the energy transition a major topic for the Netherlands. Here's our team's report.
At first glance, the outskirts of Groningen look no different from the rest of the Dutch countryside. Except that deep underground, lies Europe's largest natural gas field. Intense extraction began in the 1960s, over the years causing small but damaging earthquakes.
My kitchen used to stand there. I had a garden and I had sheep. It's terrible to see what the place has become. I was happy here and now there's nothing.
She'll never forget the tremors that damaged her house and forced her to leave.
Everything started to move. The house shook, the walls came down. It only lasted a few seconds, but we thought the world was coming to an end.
The company that operates the gas field is a joint venture between Shell and ExxonMobil called NAM. It rehoused Corinne and helped pay for work on thousands of other damaged homes in this northern province of the Netherlands. Locals held protests against gas extraction and the government finally ordered production to stop by 2030.
The region is damaged, the value of the houses is dropping. I live here for 42 years. We've had multiple earthquakes. 3.6 was the largest. I think it's all about money. In 2030, they're planning to shut the whole gas system down here in the Netherlands for this gas field. And by then, it's 98–99% empty.
The Groningen gas field accounts for half of the Netherlands' total production and has created 20,000 jobs in the region, according to this union representative.
We want to have good profit from the gas, but we want to arrange it in such a way that people don't suffer from earthquakes, but also don't suffer from job losses.
Employees are training to work with renewable energies, but the union expects new jobs to be less secure.
We're the energy province. Without the mining, we try to do the renewable thing here, building wind parks in the northern part of the North Sea. But it takes like 10 years before it's up and running. So what's going to happen in between?
As the Dutch government looks to phase out gas, it wants homes to go green. In this Groningen suburb, brand new social housing gets energy from solar panels and geothermal pumps.
This house is getting energy for heating and sanitary hot water from a heat pump. That is energy that's extracted from the ambient air. Even air with a temperature of -10 has a lot of energy in it.
Locals no longer see gas simply as a source of income. Some consider it a curse. But 7 out of the 8 million Dutch homes rely on natural gas, and that needs to change for the government, who wants to cut carbon emissions to comply with the 2015 Paris Accord on climate.
Here in France, the far-right leader Marine Le Pen has today been ordered to pay back nearly €300,000 to the European Parliament. Just over 2 years ago, the Parliament ruled that the leader of the far-right Rassemblement National Party and MEP had received €298,500, quote, unduly, over a 5-year period. This for parliamentary assistance by an aide who was actually based in Paris and not found to have contributed to Marine Le Pen's European work. Well, on Thursday, the European Court of Justice rejected an appeal from Ms. Le Pen. While campaigning for Sunday's polls, she denounced, in her words, the flagrant violation of her rights. She's pledged to take the case to the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. Well, this brings us to the final report in our series, Europe Behind the Scenes. While that case was ongoing, we asked our Brussels correspondent to look into the work of MEP's assistants. This from Alex Le Bourdon.
The day is just beginning for parliamentary assistant Emmanuel, and he's up against the clock. First on the agenda, a vote on speed limits. At the Internal Market Consumer Protection Committee, the MEP he works for can't make it, so Emmanuel is standing in to keep an eye on proceedings.
Here, things move quickly. Next, we have to run to the other side of the building for the Common Agricultural Policy. It's going to be a marathon. There'll be 8 hours of voting, and there are more than 1,500 amendments because no one can agree.
The vote, and it is adopted 25 votes in favour.
What you need to understand is that each MEP is part of 2 or 3 working groups, 2 or 3 committees. The problem is that some are scheduled at the same time.
There's no time to lose before heading to the Farming Committee. It's a start of a long voting session on the much argued over policy. The text is already complex, and some amendments are added at the last minute. Emmanuel helps his MEP with the details. The Common Agricultural Policy isn't the only complicated dossier Marc Tarabella has to consider. So the MEP has 3 assistants to help him with his workload.
I wrote the official report on public procurement. 120 organizations wanted to meet with me. That dossier alone took me 2 years of work, meetings and negotiations with different groups. The assistants are there to help us. Without them, we'd be lost.
Some lawmakers are accused of using European parliamentary assistants to work for their own domestic political party's interests. In France, Marine Le Pen's National Rally Party is being investigated.
A lawmaker working without an assistant couldn't do their work. It's impossible. So those who have fictional assistants, or who used to, it begs the question, what value do they bring to the European Parliament? In my opinion, almost nothing.
All accredited assistants are paid directly by the European Parliament. Each lawmaker has a staff budget of around €24,000 a month. Salaries for individual assistants range from €2,000 to €8,000 per month. To prevent fraud, the European Parliament has 2 requirements. The assistants must live in Brussels, and MEPs can't employ members of their own family. But this spokesperson says it's difficult to ensure the rules are followed.
We aren't the police, we're an administration, so we deal with administrative problems. We can't check everyone who enters and leaves to check on when they are present.
There are also local assistants to consider who work in the MEP's constituency. The European Parliament pays them through third parties, generally an accountant who follows local regulations. In 2015, the European Court of Auditors caught an MEP from Eastern Europe who didn't employ 1 assistant in Brussels, but had 43 in his own country. Since this incident, MEPs have to hire assistants that are accredited by the Parliament.
Well, returning to France, President Macron's centrist pro-European list is still very much seen as being in a tie for first place with Marine Le Pen's Eurosceptic Rassemblement National. Now, though, her lead candidate has been using the UK as an example of why he thinks leaving the European Union could be beneficial. Jordan Bardella stated that the UK's economy has been doing better as a result of the vote to leave the EU. Roxanne Runel from our Europe desk fact-checked the claim. Here's what she found out.
The British economy has never been in better shape. That's a recent claim from Jordan Bardella, the lead candidate for the French far-right party Rassemblement National, led by Marine Le Pen. He added that unemployment hasn't been this low for 45 years and wages have gone up. So is he right? On unemployment, he is. Just 3.5% of Brits were actively job-seeking at the end of January of this year. That's the lowest proportion since 1975. As for wages, they have risen faster than inflation, a 1.5% rise in just 1 year. However, the UK is far from undergoing an economic miracle. Since a majority of voters opted to leave the EU in the referendum, the pound sterling has suffered a vertiginous drop in value. The result of that is that inflation has risen compared to its pre-referendum levels. On a day-to-day level, UK residents have seen their purchasing power slashed. As a result, consumption is at its lowest level in 5 years. As for economic growth, the UK's economy is today between 2 and 3% smaller than where economists say it would have been if there had not been a referendum. That means the UK is generating €7.6 billion less each quarter than could have been expected without Brexit. As for industry, investment in the auto sector has fallen from £2.5 billion in 2015 to £0.6 billion in 2018. 50% of the British-made vehicles are exported to the EU. The group Jaguar Land Rover made 4,500 workers redundant in the UK. All in all, 45% of British people believe that quitting the EU would make their economic situation worse.
Something different for you now. The UK's politics may have been turned on its head recently, but if you go on social media, there is evidence that fine, long-standing British traditions are being upheld. I am talking about this. Voters taking pictures of their dogs at polling stations, proving the UK's reputation as a nation of animal lovers. OK, it is actually quite a recent phenomenon, but it has been a top trend online this Thursday. Now, according to British election rules, dogs don't always have to be left outside. If the venue usually lets them in, they're allowed to help their master pick their vote. And I ought to add that this is not, in fact, a dog. It is a goat, apparently. Definitely banned from polling stations in all circumstances. Well, that's it from us and from them for now. Thanks very much for being with us. We'll see you tomorrow for more from the Europe Report.